to be completely honest here, there isn't just one perfect sewing machine for quilting. I mean, it would save us all a lot of time if there was, but unfortunately, it's going to vary from person to person based on 4 variables: budget, brand, preferences, and maybe even your location. So first up is budget, and I just want to remind you that the bare minimum that we need to quilt is a straight stitch, reliable tension, and the ability to sew through multiple layers of fabric at a time. That's it. We're going to talk about a lot of bells and whistles, but if your budget doesn't support that, there's no pressure to get those high-end machines. Stick with your budget. So that being said, there are several options that can make sewing and quilting more enjoyable, and I'm going to cover some of those later in this video. But right now, let's talk about price. There is a huge price range for sewing machines from like a couple $100s to several $1,000s. A couple of the differences are the way the machine runs. For instance, this Singer machine is a lot louder and clunkier than my mid-range Janome over here. The more expensive a sewing machine is, the more special features it tends to have. Higher-end machines also tend to have at least some level of computerization. Some of them have full-on tablets connected to the machine, so that can really jack up the price. It can be easier to get help with higher-end machines with like built-in communities online, a big fan base maybe. Plus there are more skilled workers to help fix your machine or provide like routine maintenance. So there are several things to consider when you are setting your budget here. I asked quilters on an online quilting group which sewing machines they would recommend for beginners, and there were 5 sewing machine brands that were overwhelmingly suggested, and they were Juki, Janome, Baby Lock, Bernina, and Brother. And these quilters are brand loyal, okay? They said things like, "I'd never buy anything but a Bernina," or one lady said, "I have 3 Jukis and I love every single one of them." Of course, these are not the only brands of sewing machines to choose from. Exhibit A, my Singer over here, but they seem to be the absolute most beloved brands, so that might be a good place to start your shopping. No matter which make or model you look at though, please make sure and do a lot of research. Check on how reliable it is or how easy to use it is. I recommend you do a lot of window shopping and comparing, because your choice of sewing machine can really affect how much you enjoy the sewing and quilting process. Now let's talk about a few different options that you might want your sewing machine to include. And remember, these are not 100% necessary, but they can be nice quality of life additions. And I want to start with my biggest pet peeve about this machine, and it's this space right here. This is called the throat, or I've also heard it called the harp, and it can make a big difference when you're finishing your quilt. The larger that space is, the easier it is to work on your quilt, and it allows you to work on larger quilts. With a small throat space like this, I've had good luck using something called the quilt as you go method, but that's a whole different video. When you're quilting, you're connecting several different layers of fabric and batting together, and to do that, you have to roll it up to get it through the machine. And if you'll notice right here, it can get very tight and it can be harder to use as your quilts get bigger. And this isn't even a very large quilt. This is like a throw size quilt. So that has been a challenge to do larger quilts. And let's go over to the Janome for a little size comparison. Over here at the Janome, you can see there's like twice as much space here for your quilt. And using that same quilt from before, look how much extra space there is. It's amazing. Look at all that space. So it becomes so much more convenient to finish your quilts. There's less of a struggle, and you can work on larger quilts too. This clear platform right here is called an extension table, and it literally extends the working space of your sewing machine. For quilting, it really helps you manage the weight and the bulk of your quilt as you're quilting. So if your machine ends here and you're quilting a quilt and it's hanging over that edge right there, it can create tension and pull as you try to quilt it, which can result in messy quilting lines, and it can make it harder to just get it through your machine. So that's why an extension table is good here. You have it rolled under here, and then on the other side you can roll it here, and it doesn't pull over the edge. The Janome and the Singer both came with extension tables. Here's an example of the Singer's extension table. It's smaller. It's not as long and it's not as wide, but it's still better than nothing. Unfortunately, not all sewing machines come with an extension table, but they can usually be bought separately. If you do buy them separately, make sure you double and triple check that they are compatible with your machine though, okay? So you don't have any buyer's remorse. This is a walking foot. And so is this. So you can see that they can vary wildly based on brand. This is the Singer one, and I had to buy it separately, and this is the Janome one, and it came with the machine. And basically, everything that's hidden inside here is built in on the Janome, and that's why it looks so different. But you know what, I should probably tell you what a walking foot does, so let's back up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to pop off this foot real quick. And if I'm using terms that aren't familiar to you, don't worry, I'm going to make a video all about the different parts of the sewing machine. All you need to know right now is this is a foot, and there are lots of different ones. So down here you'll see these rough textured bars. These are called feed dogs, and their purpose in a sewing machine is to advance the fabric. So I'll just turn this here, and you'll see that they move up and down. So they grab the fabric, pull it back, drop down, grab the fabric, pull it back. So this little movement is basically all you need for piecing. When you start adding more layers, and I'm talking about, this is the quilting step. You've got your quilt top, you've got this fluffy stuff, it's called batting, and you've got your backing. You can, as you're running it through your machine, your bottom fabric might be being pulled at a different rate than your top fabric, which can result in like bubbles and tucks in your quilt. And that's where a walking foot comes in. So this will sit on top of your fabric like a regular quilting foot, but it is also going to move. So let me put this on real quick so you can see what that looks like. So as you can see, the walking foot is on and it's sturdy, but there's one more step for this one. You pull down this little guy, he comes down and under and he clicks in to the foot. So now let's turn my machine back on. So I'm not going to thread it because I'm not actually going to sew anything. But you'd put your fabric under, lower your presser foot, and then watch this. You see this mechanism is moving the top. See? To recap, the feed dogs down below are all you need for piecing your quilt tops, but when you want to start quilting, this isn't mandatory, but when you want to start quilting and you want your layers to move at the same rate, you can add on a walking foot. This is the needle position button, and it determines where your needle lands when you stop sewing. So it can either stop up here, out of the fabric, or down in the fabric. So for instance, its default setting is to stop up out of the fabric. So there, I've sewn a couple stitches and it stops up. If I push this button, not only does it lower it down into the fabric, it is going to stop in the fabric when I am done sewing. And this is good for a couple reasons. One, when I'm piecing, I don't use a lot of pins, so I like to be able to stop and readjust my fabric. Maybe they got a little wonky down here before I've sewn that part. I just want to tease it back into place, and then I can sew again without messing up where my needle is. If it stops in the up position like this, and I try to fix it down here, sometimes it can shift underneath the presser foot and get all wonky. And then instead of having a straight seam line, you have one with a little bit of a jog in it. And even though it's on the back of your fabric on the wrong side, it can affect the front of your quilt if you have these little jogs and tucks in your seam line. I also like to stop with my needle down when I'm quilting because sometimes you're not going to do a straight line, sometimes you want to do an angle. So you can stop, pivot, you lift up your presser foot to pivot, then you put it back down and you sew some more. You can stop and you can pivot, and this way you can make nice crisp shapes without, moving your fabric on accident. You want to be very purposeful. So I'm just going to sew a quick seam, and then most machines nowadays have a thread cutter, a manual thread cutter, attached to the machine, and you just pull it through that loop, and then you've cut off the extra thread. As you can see, it leaves a little bit of thread waste, and that thread waste is going to show up on your pieces, and then you're going to have to cut that off. But there is another way. You're going to use less thread, and it's also just sort of fun, I think. So you sew a seam, and then before you pick up your presser foot, you can push this button here with the scissors, and it cuts all your threads. The threads are much shorter, and it's just a nicer finish here too. And again, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just sort of a nice quality of life thing. It keeps things just a little bit neater, and you use just a little bit less thread. Another feature you might want to consider is the amount of stitches that your machine is capable of doing. So you can see here on my little Singer, I can do 99 stitches, and this includes like buttonhole stitches and decorative stitches and utility stitches. And the Janome over here has 250 stitches, both utility, decorative, buttonhole, applique, all sorts of things. And it also has the capability to monogram or to spell out specific words and phrases. I'd say probably 90% of the time I'm using a plain old boring straight stitch. That doesn't mean it's not fun to mix it up with decorative stitches now and then. It's just that this stitch is the workhorse for quilters. This stitch here, the zigzag stitch, is probably my second most used stitch, and I use it for projects outside of quilting, but I also use it for something called machine applique. And the interesting thing about a zigzag stitch is you can really change the way it looks based on the settings you use. So this is straight out of the machine. I haven't tweaked anything. But if I shorten the stitch, I can get a much closer stitch, almost a satin stitch here. These stems for these flowers are tacked down using zigzag. There are a lot of people who are going to use a much tighter weave for that, but I was feeling very lazy and I just wanted to get it done, so that's why I used a wider zigzag. The decorative stitches can be a lot of fun on quilt tops and binding just to add a little bit of extra detail, and I've even seen people do a whole quilt using a wavy stitch. It was a longer wavy stitch than this, but it looked really nice. It was a nice long wave like that. And here is a quick look at the monogramming function from the Janome. And if I'm being perfectly honest, it's not that great, and I want to blame it on the fact that it's a little bit of an older machine, but I have no other experience with monogramming, so I don't know. Hello, kitty. But if you're really interested in adding a lot of customization, words, maybe graphics, pictures and things, you probably are going to want to look for an embroidery machine. They're a lot more expensive, but if that's what you're into, then that's what you're going to want to look for. Now let's do a little bit of window shopping. This is a great online sewing machine site. It has a huge selection to browse, and I'm going to link to this site in the description of this video in case you want to do some research here. It has a large selection of sewing machines, like I said. You can compare them easily and just sort of get an idea of what's out there and the different brands and just compare everything in one convenient spot. Then you can take what you learn here to your local sewing machine stores and try machines out IRL and really get a good feel for what you want in a sewing machine. If you don't have a local or a reputable store nearby, this site offers free shipping on, I think, $29 free shipping. And they also have financing available if that's something that you're interested in. And if you're a bargain hunter, you might want to check out their sales page. Obviously, it's not just sewing machines here. Here's some cabinets and sewing tables and things. So you might want to use the filters to narrow it down. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to go to products and then come down to machines. And then you're going to see a whole bunch of options. The type of machine and the brand, but we're going to go here. So either sewing machine or quilting machines. And I'm going to choose quilting machines. And the very first thing I want to point out is this right here. It's called a long arm quilting machine, and it is not what you want. It is considerably bigger, and there's a lot more features that you really don't need for traditional quilting and piecing. So you can see these handles here, and that's a pretty good indication that it is a long arm machine. So is this tablet-y computer thing up here. The difference between a regular domestic sewing machine and a long arm quilting machine is that this rests on a frame and it moves around as you're quilting. Instead of moving your quilt, the sewing machine moves. It's for the very last stage of making a quilt. It secures your layers together, and it's the thread design that you see on top of a quilt. So let's go down here, see if we can find a better example for you. So here, this is what it looks like when a long arm is going. It's making a pretty quilting design, and you can actually pay people with long arm machines to finish your quilts. I actually watch long arming videos on Instagram and YouTube, and they are just sort of mesmerizing the way that it comes together. So I recommend that as some optional homework for this video. Go check out what long arm quilting looks like, and maybe price it if that's something that you're interested in, if you want to send it off to be quilted. So let's go back to the original page we were looking at, and I want to use some filters. So I'm going to start by sorting from low to high. And you can see there are some very reasonable options here. These two even have, oh, this is the one that I was showing you. This is the Singer Patchwork. These two have extension tables included, it looks like. Another thing, if you're looking to save money, you can look for factory serviced or refurbished machines. And those are basically previously used. I think factory serviced machines are just ones that never were sold and they were sent back to the factory. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. So you can see there's a lot of variety here. Also, this says long arm quilting machine. I don't think this is a long arm machine. This looks like a domestic machine. But you can see that we're starting to see some longer throat spaces here mixed in. And there's a good variety of brands, I think. But let's go back up here and look at the sewing machines and not the quilting machines. Okay, this is the sewing machine section, and it is going to have some overlap with the quilting machines, low to high, but you'll see some differences. For instance, these three right here are compact sewing machines, handheld sewing machines. I really wouldn't recommend these three. They seem to be more like, I would say, novelty sewing machines. So they might be good for like really simple mending, or for children or something like that. But for quilting, when you want precision and you want them to be reliable, I would say skip these and then start with the Singers. And again, Singers are going to be, they're often lower quality, but they get the job done. So don't discount them right away, okay? You'll see that's another factory serviced one. You've got some Brothers. I've never heard of this brand, so you might want to do some research. But let's do some more filters. I think I'm going to choose Juki, and that narrows it down a bunch. And you can almost see this is sort of more rounded and childlike, and then as we get down we start seeing some more angles and things. And I don't know why that seems to indicate quality to me, but for some reason it does. That might just be an internal bias, I don't know. And this also, you want to avoid these. These are sergers. They're called overlockers sometimes, and these are for finishing edges, usually for apparel and things, so we don't need this for quilting. Let's go down and add another filter. And let's choose one of these top ones to take a closer look at. Let's go with this Juki here. It's a new product and it's eligible for free delivery. I'm going to get a little closer look here, and we can see it has a thread cutter. That's one of the things I recommend. It doesn't seem to have an extension table, and it has a shorter working space, throat space here. It might come with an extension table. You'll have to read the description down below. It also has fewer stitches here. In case that's something that you are interested in, you might want more. That might be fine. This is a buttonhole stitch, and we don't really need this for quilting unless you want to add a button decoratively, and then that's another story. Although I guess you still wouldn't really need the buttonhole. You just would want to tack down the button. Here is the needle threader. You run it down here and around here, and there's a little hook that goes through your needle. You get your thread hooked under there and it pulls through. Here are some accessories. More buttonholes. Let's go down a little. Okay, we can see here that Juki offers a 5-year limited warranty, so that's pretty good for a brand new machine. This is an add-on. If you want to go to quilt retreats or classes, it's good to have an easy way to carry your sewing machine. And then here's a big long blurb all about the machine. And then notable features. This is good. Lock stitch. That's what I was trying to figure out the name for. Next to the thread cutter, there's a lock stitch button. Oh, needle up, needle down. I think that was the third button up there. Let's go back up and see. This must be the needle up, needle down button. Okay, that's a good thing to have. So you can see there's a bunch of notable features here. You got specifications. And here is again the accessory list, but all bullet pointed out so you know what is included. One thing I really like about this site is the ability to compare to similar models. So here is the machine we're looking at now, and then here are some other options. So they're different brands, well, Janome, Juki, different price points. You can see the different reviews. This one doesn't have any reviews yet because it is brand new. And then it will compare some specs here. Oh, it's interesting that the warranties for the Juki are 5 years, but the Janomes are 25 years. So that might be something you want to keep in mind as you shop and compare. Down here is where you would usually see the reviews, but since this is a brand new machine, there aren't any reviews yet. These are just reviews for the site, I think. So let's go back to our browsing page. And I'm going to get rid of these filters, the Juki and the sewing machine, and go from high to low. And you're going to see, wow, that's a pretty big price tag. But I'm willing to bet that like most of these most expensive machines, maybe not this one, but most of them have embroidery. And if that's something you're interested in, great. But do keep in mind it's going to raise the price tag significantly. Let's just take a look at this one. That is a beautiful machine. So sleek. I want to look at it a little closer. Yeah, it looks like a touch screen. A bunch of buttons here. I don't know what they do. Really nice. Oh, this is the embroidery apparatus. I don't know. I'm not well versed in embroidery. So I know this is the hoop, and I think this moves the hoop around. Oh, this little capsule thing, this must change or hold your different thread colors. I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to look at that real quick. I am somewhat interested in embroidery machines, but they are well outside of my personal price range. So back to browsing. I want to put some filters on this again. So let's do Janome. And let's also do sewing machines. Okay. So you can see the price has dropped. Like it's the third of a price of the top one on before we applied the filters. So let's just go ahead and choose that as our top of the line model. Janome Continental M6. So you can see it has a large screen again. Probably touch screen, right? There's no spinning dial or anything. And let's take a closer look here. I think this is a cutting one and a needle up and down. And I can't tell what those two are from this picture. That's a good looking machine. Scroll down. Here's your blurb. Actually, I think this is the wrong blurb. It says Horizon Memory Craft, and that's actually the Janome that I was showing you was a Horizon Memory Craft, although maybe a different model. They have a ton of features listed out here. 7-inch color LCD touchscreen, 400 built-in stitches. Wow, that's a lot. Full intensity lighting system. That would be nice. Needle up and down. Direct touch sewing adjust for, I have no idea what that is. You would have to read the manual because there is a ton of stuff listed here. So down here we have some more features but with some helpful pictures. This is interesting, the way you can taper the embroidery instead of just cutting it off. That's nice. AccuFeed Flex Plus Layered Fabric Feeding System. That is a mouthful. I'm not sure what that means. It kind of sounds like it might be something to do with a walking foot. Some more, this is about your accessories, some specifications, and I think this, for most quilters, is gibberish. I don't know what most of this means, and it really, frankly, doesn't make that big of a difference. A knee lift is a thing that can be attached to your sewing machine, and it raises your presser foot with the touch of your knee. The Janome I was showing you has that, but it is not compatible with my sewing table, unfortunately, so I don't use it. Working space, that is your throat space, I think. So that's a pretty decently wide one. So that's this Janome. Let's look at another sewing machine that's sort of in the middle of this one and that first Juki. It's almost 2,000 less than that Janome I was showing you, but it also has an extension table and a wide throat space and a bunch of options. Let's look at the screen. Looks good. Lots of stitches, at least 250. Oh, I like this when there are product videos so you can get a good look at the machines. 5-year warranty, wide sewing area, touchscreen interface, and a multitude of other functions. Made for professionals who need a reliable, high-quality machine. Okay, this says equipped with Juki Smart Feed. So I think this is a walking foot. Dual feed. Okay, dual feed is another term for walking foot. And the dual feed is the top and then the bottom, the feed dogs. There's a lot of stuff about their touch panel, and oh, it looks like there is a built-in guide. That is good. You don't have to keep consulting your book. You can go right into your machine. Here's a knee lift. That's what it looks like. Electronic feed dog control mechanism. I cannot begin to imagine what that means. This one has 33 reviews, so people like this one. 4.5 stars. Has everything I wanted in a machine for piecing and quilting. Great deal, great price, great buy, great value. So that might be one you want to check out if you're looking for sort of a middle of the road budget-wise machine. But I really, really, really want to state it one more time. You do not need to spend thousands of dollars if that is not in the budget. Don't let that stop you from quilting. You can get the lower end ones. Maybe you have a relative who doesn't use their machine anymore. Maybe you found a reliable source online. Beware eBay and Facebook because they don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. You might find out that it's just a very big paperweight, which would suck. So just do your research and have fun shopping, and please try not to get overwhelmed with the selection. Okay, let's go back to that first Juki. It has this narrower throat space, which is common for the lower end machines. Also, the older ones tend to have more narrow throat spaces. If you're nervous about quilting on a machine with a smaller throat space, you can look up Quilt As You Go quilting. It's where you quilt in smaller pieces and then combine those smaller pieces to make up a larger quilt. And it is a really good way to cope with these smaller throat spaces. So check that out. And I also want to mention again that you can get your quilts professionally quilted by a long arm quilter. That is more expensive and it takes longer because you might be in a long line to get your quilt done, but it's just another way that you can cope with this smaller throat space. Thanks for spending time with me today, quilters. If you want to support this channel and help me buy supplies and materials for future videos, please visit my Buy Me a Coffee page linked in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos. And I'll see you again real soon. Bye!